Hello, and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally, the show that both looks at the finances of the music industry while bringing you stories from the past week in the pop business. I'm Stuart Dredge, and he's not here this week. Steve's in Texas for seeing a lot of good bands, but seeing very little good cider, so he's in my thoughts. And I'm flying solo today, except I'm not really, because I got some guests. So today I'm joined by Katherine and Ella from British band Picture Parlour, who released her debut album, The Parlour, last November. And we're also joined by David Martin, CEO of the Featured Artists Coalition, which is an industry body here in the UK that represents the rights and interests of music artists. So we're going to be talking about the challenges of touring, making ends meet when you're an emerging artist, even when you're signed to a major label. And we're going to be talking about the new initiative, the UK Artist Touring Fund, that Steve and I discussed a bit last week, but David is here to give us the full details on what it is and what it can mean for artists. Right. Welcome to The Price of Music. Katherine and Ella from Picture Parlour and David from the Featured Artists Coalition. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
And great. I think it's been good. It's been a chance to talk about, I think, some of the challenges facing artists, but also some of the optimistic stuff about how it can be helped. So it's going to be a good conversation. But I wanted to dive straight in, I guess, with the origin story. And I'm sorry, because I know as a band, you probably have to tell your origin story to every journalist you ever talk to. But you actually met in an independent venue, which is quite a good grounding point for our conversation. So tell me about those about how you met and what that place meant to you as fans, but also as artists.
Yeah, hey, it's Ella from Picture Parlour here. And yeah, we met at the Castle in Manchester, which is kind of a cornerstone of the music scene in Manchester, in Northern Quarter. And yeah, it was an interesting one. I was basically in another band at the time, and I was playing a show, and Kate, in mega fan style, ended up coming to that show.
I was in the audience right at the front with a huge sign. We both had the same bass player in both of our bands, and I guess back then everyone would go to the Castle every week and see whoever was playing.
Yeah, rhythm section problems. It's few and far between.
Yeah, so I watched Ella's show, and straight afterwards I found her in the bar and was like, we need to jam together. Like, you're great. And that's kind of how it happened. That next week, I think we met up, we jammed, and the rest was history.
And then I went round to your flat, and then I basically didn't leave for about 6 weeks. We just kept writing and getting to know each other, and yeah, it was a cool time.
But yeah, the Castle is still going. The Castle's still there. We were there the other day. It's as good as it was back then. So get yourselves down to the Castle.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because I remember, like, when I was at university, Norwich Arts Centre was my equivalent. And I remember the first time I went there, I was like, oh my God, everyone here knows each other and I don't know anyone. But very quickly, you're like, wow, everyone is so welcoming. It is a community. It's not just a place where people go and see bands. And you said that, like, the idea of you go there every week and everyone would go there every week. It was a community. It wasn't just a place, was it?
Yeah, it's a huge part of the grassroots scene, I suppose. You know, it's the same when we moved to London. Eventually, we found the Windmill, which I'm sure we'll speak about a little bit later. But all of those independent venues become kind of a lifeline for indie artists, and even just like being a student and moving to a new place. You know, you find that sort of community, and it's your social life, isn't it? Yeah. Really, yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I really want to ask you about the Windmill, because to me, it's like a sort of a mythical place, because Steve goes there a lot and I'm out in the sticks. But it feels like it's a place where bands don't just play once, they play regularly. They have residencies, they have community, and then they have a lot of people kind of playing with each other. But is that how you found it? Like, when you went there, was it kind of like community from the start for you?
Yeah, I mean, just what you said, when we moved down, it was this mythical place. We'd heard about it from way up north, and everyone who'd been there would talk about how incredible it is. And we kind of didn't know where to go when we moved to London, did we?
Yeah, but we knew of that one place.
That was the one place, yeah.
Okay, I guess that's a good start. So then, yeah, we just started going down there, watching some shows, having a few drinks. And then we got chatting to Tim, the booker, who was so supportive to us at the beginning of our journey. We kind of owe him sort of everything, really.
I mean, yeah, we tried to get a gig it took months and months. And Tim he's like Gandalf. He's like one of those guys that he's hard to pin down. But once you kind of click, he's amazing. And eventually we got that gig. And then, like you said, you just kind of keep going back. It's like you get sucked into this place and you can't leave because it's just so the feeling of being there. I mean, especially when you move to a new place, or you're young and you're trying to find your scene, you go to these places and you get this feeling, and it's magical, and it feels like there's like-minded people there, and there's this search for something new. Especially as a musician as well, you want to share what you've got. And the Windmill was that perfect kind of like melting pot of just people who wanted to discover new things, people who wanted to share cool stuff. And it was a pivotal moment for us, I think, as a band.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm always wary of quoting previous interviews, but I think I read in one of your interviews that, is it right? You were playing there and you were supporting people. And by the time you had your first headline gig, you sold it out, but there wasn't even any music out at the time. Is that the right kind of chronology? Which is that must be an amazing feeling as a band, like to be building that word of mouth purely through having played live and people liking you and coming back next time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a testament to how incredible and how strong those venues are. Like, it's without them, no one would have known who we were at the time. And like you said, we didn't really have any music out. But because we played the venue so many times, you've got the locals who just love music, who, every time we'd play a new show, it would kind of feel more electric. And that's testament again to the live scene. And then it's a kind of word of mouth thing of like, you've got to get to this show. I mean, we still go to the Windmill now and check out new bands. Like there's a band called Little Grandad, who we're huge fans of, and that they've kind of done a similar thing at the time. I think Mary in the Junkyard, they were doing it with us, and it's just really cool. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, it's funny because whenever we do record a show normally with Steve, and I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing this week?" He's like, "I've seen Little Grandad again."
Mm-hmm.
he's really excited about them.
Time. Yeah, it's a thing, but I don't know. It's just really. It's like magical. It sounds quite like whimsical and cheesy to say, but it's a magical thing to be able to go see a band like in real time develop. Because our first live show must have been god awful. I don't know. Tim must have been stood there like, oh God, why have I let them play? But by the 10th time, you kind of like, oh, okay, we know the ropes now. You learn your sound, you learn what songs you want to play, you can flip the set around, and it was great. I miss it.
Yeah, the community is so loyal as well. Like you have people like Lou who comes down and films, all of the emerging artists.
Oh, I've seen the videos, of some of the artists.
Yeah, and that has been so instrumental, I know, to so many artists with, basically having a fully formatted live video on YouTube with a platform. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got a lot of our sort of like early attention from industry and stuff. So.
Yeah, and not having to release music because we all know it's expensive to, record and release. And that's not something that you can just pull out of a hat. So to be able to have people learn the words to a song or connect with a tune and not have to release on like Spotify or iTunes, that was amazing as well. Mm-hmm. So big up Lou Smith.
No, definitely. I mean, again, tell me if I got the chronology wrong, but I think your first single was Independent, then you signed to Island, and the second single came out. And I know that I guess a lot of people who maybe just don't follow the industry thing will think, right, wow, you're signed to an established label. You might not be rolling in money yet, but you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to pay your bills, focus on your craft, start writing the first album, recording, get out on tour. And I think people tend to think, right, a deal is the point at which everything becomes you're sustainable. You're right. Mm-hmm. I know one of the things which might say is how it's not always that story for you. So I guess talk about that time. Like, I mean, signing a deal must have been very exciting. How quickly was that tempered by, oh, Jesus, we've got to pay the rent?
I mean, yeah, it felt like we got the golden ticket. We couldn't believe it. When we got our first email from a major label, we thought it was a scam. So we were sending it around to our mates like, okay, who's taking the mick here? But then it turned out to be legit. And then, we've spoken about this a lot, haven't we? Like, we wouldn't do anything differently.
No one's going to turn down the opportunity. But kind of what you said, Stuart, you very quickly learn that maybe it's not the golden ticket that you imagine as a kid. You know what I mean? A common misconception, it was something that we thought too, is if you signed a major label deal, you would have like a living wage, like you'd be able to survive financially and then be able to make the music. That's not always the case. And we didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
So that's a common misconception. But like Ella said, you know, it's literally like the top of the mountain. That's what you think in your head. Like, it's a total dream. You get a major label interested in you. Like, you'd be a fool to turn it down at the time.
Every artist's dream, I think, at least for us, is, you know, to be able to focus on your project and your art full time whilst being financially stable. It felt like you kind of like hacked the system. We were like, this feels too good to be true. But then, yeah, you know, like what I'd say is, you know, never be afraid to ask all the questions. If you have any sort of instinct or an uncertainty about something, don't feel bad or like you're nagging for asking too many questions. Because I feel like we did ask a lot of questions because obviously, you know, we wanted to make sure that we could have longevity. And, you know, you get a lot of different things thrown at you at once. And yeah, it's kind of, it's when you don't have the like background or like a financial fallback or the expertise, and you're relying on a lot of, you know, new people who you've met to make these decisions for you, it can be quite overwhelming.
No, definitely. And so how was it at the time? Because I guess you were thinking about going off on, well, you know, I don't know if you were thinking about national tours at the time, but you were also writing and recording presumably in that. How was that as people, I suppose? How was that kind of, because I guess you're also thinking, right, we've got to pay the rent, we've got to be able to eat, we've got to fund, and we've got to fund these things. How was that experience? Like you said, I guess it was quite new in that you hadn't had to budget as a band before.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you learn on the job. I mean, I reckon any musician out there would agree with me that when you're growing up, you don't necessarily connect business with music. Because to me, like, music was this world of rock stars and fairy tales, and you romanticize it. You know, you don't realize that behind it is this kind of corporate, and it's not all doom and gloom, but you know, the reality is that music's a business for a lot of people. And unfortunately, like for artists, something that we don't realize early on is that it's a business for you. You got to feed yourself. You know, you got family that you might have to look after. You got to keep a roof over your head. So yeah, I guess early on we didn't have that knowledge. And so when we got the major label deal, we were like, sick, like we'll be able to live, we can survive, we can like pay the band, we'll have a crew, like we can have a sound engineer, all those things that we didn't have beforehand. And it felt like the stakes were higher because we could play bigger venues and travel further. But I guess something that, and again, this, I'm sure David will speak about it, this is why the FAC is so brilliant, is that there are organizations out there who can intervene and help with that. I suppose give access to that information that maybe we didn't have at the time, which is, you know, you do have to budget further down the line than what you think you might have to budget for. And, you know, the sacrifices that we had to make early on in terms of tour.
Yeah. And
touring's a huge thing.
Particularly with touring, just the sheer cost of, you know, getting, especially a full band and, you know, crew, sound engineer, if you have one, like out on the road. And yeah, what we kind of realized pretty quickly was how fast that initial advance depletes when you're salarying multiple people. You're paying for, you know, transport, van hire, accommodation, PDs, backline if you need it. It goes pretty quickly from thinking like, oh my God, we can, you know, pay rent with the deal we've got, to being like, how are we even going to make this next tour happen?
It's weird, isn't it? 'Cause, I mean, this is something we talked about with Steve last week. The idea that there are some things, like you say, just to be able to tour, you need to have the tour bus accommodation. But then also, like as artists, you want to put on a good show. You want to have the full band. You want to have and so in a way, I mean, is that something you've also had to face? That idea of, here's what we'd like to do with our live show. And it's not even like necessarily stadium pyro at this point. like it's not. I mean, but just to have the full band, or obviously if you would like that. But was that something you faced with it? Was it also the creative, I guess, compromises to make about how can we get out and make this work?
I think, especially as a rock band, your USP is live shows. You know, that's our thing. That's what we love to do the most. It's where we'd hope to find our audiences through live music. So to have to like accept that maybe the show isn't going to be what you would like it to be in terms of, you know, not having a sound engineer. So maybe the vocals, I don't know,
Feedback.
Yeah, feedback, all those like silly things where I suppose like back in the day when we were playing the Castle or Gulliver's or the Quarry, that was just jokes. Like it's fun. It's like, it's funny. It's annoying, but it's fine. But when you kind of like sign a deal and you have what you imagine is this tour support where you can go out and play those shows because you're playing to bigger audiences and you want to put on the best show, to think that you still have to sacrifice those things. It was a shock to us because we were like, oh damn, like why did we sign all of our rights away? Like we could have just done this ourselves. Do you know what I mean? So
I'm feeling a bit guilty about leaving David in the background, so I might bring you in now, David, because I guess you talk to obviously a lot of artists. Is this something that is there something you hear regularly from artists who are taking their first steps into the business? Like I think it came across very strongly there. Like there's things you expect and things you don't realize until you're doing them, and then you have to make these choices.
Yeah, I think there's lots that Ella and Katherine have said there that we, that's part of the reason that we're doing the UK Artist Touring Fund. We hear these things repeatedly. I think a couple of things that really jump out at me is the sort of Wizard of Oz element. No artist is getting involved in music because they love business. They're artists because they want to be artists. And the FAC exists. I mean, often people don't understand the FAC is for all artists, not just for independent artists. And it's for artists at all stages of their careers. And often say this, that people say, the FAC is there to tell you how to do things. We're not really. We're there to show you what the landscape looks like, because artists have lots of different thoughts about how they might want to operate, how they might want to run their business. Some might want to sign to a major, some might not. So we're there to shine a light on how the industry works, not to direct people in how to develop their careers. But I will guarantee that should I guarantee? I will always guarantee that no artist, or certainly no artist I've ever spoken to, has thought, I'd really like to be in the music business, I'll become an artist. It doesn't work that way around. You have to retrofit all that stuff and pick up all those skills once you've decided that, once you've worked out that you're an artist. And I think that's really common. I think the cost element is we hear about it all the time. I think we often as well in the industry, we talk about the division between live and recorded, but most artists don't think in a completely divided manner, but both things are symbiotic. I think similarly, most music fans don't go, I'm a fan of live music, I hate recorded, or I hate recorded music and I love live. There's a symbiosis in both of those things. And I think that's important when we're talking about the touring fund as well, because they both feed and breed off each other. And I think that you've touched on a couple of things there as well around, I think you mentioned this in the podcast as well last week, Stu. There are two things that are sold in the music industry: recordings and performances. If you're really good at those two things, you can make some money selling merchandise as well. But really, there's two core things. And in the live sector, that the delivery and the presentation of that performance, that is the product, really. Yes, beer is being sold and entrance fees are being sold, etc. But the product is the performance. And we're trying to do a number of things with the fund. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more. There are a couple of aims, if you like. But one of them is that presenting the music how it should be presented. So often we're hearing, particularly a sort of, I was going to say at a certain level, actually is right up to quite a high level now. Everybody is compromising. That's a problem when the whole point of this is to try and present your music and grow your audience and present your art, basically, how it should be presented. So I think that's a really key part of what we're trying to do. But yeah, there's lots that Ella and Katherine have said that we hear very frequently.
No, definitely. I mean, on the positive side, to cheer up, I mean, one of the things you've talked before in interviews about is about the kind of community that's built up around the band. And in a way, I think twice now about sometimes saying the word fans, because that is like a one-way, it implies a one-way relationship. You're playing and they're liking it. But when you've talked about what you're doing with the WhatsApp group you've got, with like, it's a community of people, like-minded people. But has that been something that's been the really positive sides of as you've been getting out there and playing to people and seeing them?
Yeah, I think ultimately the community is one of the most important things. We wouldn't be where we are today without having such a loyal community. And we have people that come to all of the shows that we do, and it almost becomes like, I suppose a friendship, like when you're seeing somebody every single night. And they're great.
Yeah, I think especially again on the grassroots scene, you see the same people. And even for us, like some of the people who come to our shows now, I met at another band's show and got talking to them, and we clicked, and they were like, oh, like they seem cool, I'll check out their music. And then now those people come to every show. So what's great is it's more of a human thing. And like you were saying, to move away from doom and gloom, I think the idea of a community can sound wishy-washy to people. What does this community mean? What is it? But realistically, like as an artist, that having that direct communication with other music fans who are just like, because that's like the top and bottom, right? We all just love music. We want to be there on stage, or we want to be there watching someone else on stage. And to be able to have a direct line of communication through the things like you mentioned, like the WhatsApp chat and hanging out after shows. Like we've had some, when we did the music venue trust tour, we had literally some of our listeners like help us pack down. Like we had no crew. Yeah. And they'll be like, it's the Radio 6 dads, man. Like they'll be like, I know how to do those wires. Give me them. I'm like, okay.
And did they know how to do those wires though?
They did better than I do. That was not their first rodeo. But yeah, it kind of grounds you a little bit when you get cynical, maybe about the corporate side of it or whatever. It's you play that show and you see those same people who are just genuinely there to enjoy good music and share that with each other. And yeah, it kind of reminds you why it's worth doing it if you have to make all those sacrifices like we were talking about, maybe sound quality. And I mean, we spoke when we last saw David, we were talking about a funny thing that happened to us at a show in Sheffield where we candidly couldn't afford to take a sound engineer. And we had the in-house guy who was just the bar staff, because the other in-house guy had to run to another independent venue and sort them out. So we were like, okay, this will be interesting. Let's see how it goes. Halfway through the show, I just see this bloke like scream, like, where's the sound engineer? Like, where's he gone? Like the feedback was terrible. And I'm like, I can't really see anything because the lights are the lights are in the way. I eventually see this bloke, this punter, just at the sound desk, like, he's effed off, he's gone. And I'm like, okay, so the sound engineer's left. That's crazy. The feedback's going crazy. But who had our back? Just a Radio 6 dad, just some bloke who was like, let me sort it, girls. Let me do it. So it's that kind of thing where like, this could have been a disaster, but actually it was funny. And in the end, it was all right. We were okay.
Yeah. And now he's your permanent sound man.
Now he works with us every show. No, I'm joking.
Definitely. Well, I'm going to bring David back in a minute, but one thing I think that we want to talk about, and you've talked about this before, is the kind of the risks that if these challenges aren't tackled, or if something done about, I guess, the diversity of people who can afford to make music and tour and become professional artists. Because, and it's something that's come up in the podcast before, this idea that there might be people out there who are brilliant artists or brilliant artists in the making. But especially if they're, say, working class, they might just have to duck out because they can't afford it now, or they've got difficult. And how, I guess, from your point of view, how big a problem is that, or how big a risk is that? Because it's one of the exciting things about British music is that it's not always just been the kind of people from one particular community or particular part of the country.
I mean, to speak candidly, we recently parted ways with the label and we had to move out of London. We can't afford to be there. So that's why we're back up north. And that's the reality for working class artists the reason we kind of found out about the FAC is we read something that Lily Fontaine from English Teacher had said about, Sofa Surfing making a debut album signed to a major label deal. Now, if that's how artists are having to cope, signed to a major label, what are independent artists doing? What are the working class artists doing who don't have that look that me and Ella had where we got that deal? You know what I mean? So in that sense, it's totally, it's morbid, to be honest. It's a morbid place. at the minute to be a working class artist.
Yeah, because I suppose it seems pretty impossible if you don't have like personal wealth to fall back on, then it's like where's the money coming from to make a tour happen, or to buy the gear that you need, or to hire the crew that you need. And I think that's something that's become more apparent to us at this point in our journey.
Even when you kind of remove just the finances, for me it was about access to information. Like, I'd never had anyone in my family who made money from art, who understood finances and accountancy, and I think it was it Tom Robinson who did the podcast with you guys, and he was speaking about when he began, he didn't know he needed a lawyer, and he just signed a bunch of deals and didn't know. That was us. Like, that's the reality, is you don't have that. They're not teaching you that in the school I went to anyway. So if we don't have that information or access to it, we don't know that it's out there, then we can't protect ourselves as working class artists. And also just to know, kind of like, have that confidence to ask, like we said before, to ask a question, to maybe question someone who feels like they know more than you do because they work in the industry. And speaking of like advice that I give, is always trust your gut instinct about those kind of things. Never be afraid to ask too many questions. But yeah, there's a real gap in access to information. It's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I know one of the sort of the, I guess the cliches that get said is people are going, oh, you don't need a label nowadays, you can do it yourself. Or people who come out of a major deal might say, great, there are certain things I can do now, or I can take control of things. And it's a positive thing. But equally, like you say, there's a lot of work in that jack of all trades, a lot of stuff you have to understand for yourself. And it's about how you get access to the information to let you do that.
Totally. And that's where David comes into it really with the FAC, is if we'd have known about that maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think we would have made different decisions. And like you said, Stuart, it's not all doom and gloom. Any job, you live and you learn. You don't just start any job and know everything that you need to know. And it's going to be okay if you're an artist and you're listening. Don't be afraid to become an artist.
Yeah, just to reiterate, the music industry is literally one of the best industries in the world, but it wouldn't hurt for artists to maybe have a little bit more context and information going into it.
And that's why it's great, again, like with the FAC, amplifying the voice of artists. Like I said, we wouldn't have known about the FAC and learned so much if we hadn't heard Lily from English Teacher speaking about it, or Gus from Alt J speaking about things. So it's great for artists to just chat about it. There's going to be problems in any job, and there's it can be fixed.
That's the thing. I think, like, particularly with artists, is kind of like a pressure, maybe internally or like from wider teams, to be like, just everything's going okay. Tell everyone everything's going okay. Like, you don't need to share like any of these like intricate worries or details. But I think we've felt the most empowered when we've spoken to other artists and been honest with each other and realised, okay, we don't feel as isolated in our situation anymore, because actually this is an industry-wide issue.
Yeah.
And
Definitely. Well, a good point to bring Dave back in. I mean, so we did, like last week, we did talk about the UK Artist Touring Fund. So I can probably spare you doing the entire spiel about it. But I guess to summarise it, it's money that's come from donations from stadium and arena gigs. An artist can apply for, is it up to £7,000 each? But talk to us about, I guess, what that is and how that's designed to help. Because I know it's very much, it's not about, we're going to pay for your tour and you can do all the pyro. It's very specific kind of help, isn't it?
It is. And I should say this is phase one. We expect to be running this more frequently and with more funding in the future. But yes, it's open to UK residents, 18 artists that are 18 plus and need to be releasing original music. In this phase, and I caveat that because we know it will evolve, but in this phase, it's for headline tours with a minimum of 3 dates, where at least 75% of the dates are booked externally, so not self-promoted. You picked up on this last week. So
me booking my village hall tour.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that, I promise.
Yeah, it's for capacities of 75 up to 2,000, so quite broad. And the shows need to take place by October. And it is a maximum of £7,000 or 40% of the total costs of your tour. And the reason for that is Firstly, as you sort of picked up on, so that people can't catch the loophole. Secondly, it's to show that there's some demand and some risk in there. Like, artists need to get out and do their very first shows, but we probably want artists to be a little bit further on in that they're going to go and play to an audience. So there needs to be some risk and somebody else taking a risk on the shows and putting in some fund into the shows. So artists wanted to have 60% of those costs up front. And the other reason is to trying to be efficient with the money, trying to be effective with the money, and trying to show that the money, rather than going, here's 20 grand and you fancy going and doing some live shows and there's not really a basis for it. We're trying to make that money stretch as far as possible to help artists develop careers. So that's the reason that it's shaped that way. I mean, and it's challenging because we're trying to do 4 different things. We're trying to, as you say, allow artists to present themselves in the right way. So many artists come to us and say, you know what, I'm used to playing in a trio, but I'm playing to a backing track and triggering samples because I can't afford to take somebody out with me. So firstly, to present themselves right. Now, if somebody comes and goes, I want to take 75 session musicians with me, yeah, they might get caught in the system there a little bit. They might not get through. So there's that part firstly. Some of it's to address market failure. So it's not just about new artists. This is not about age, this fund. There's plenty of artists who have been sustainable in the past, will be sustainable in the future. But right now there's an acute crisis in the cost of living that means ticket demand is maybe harder, or it's harder to raise prices, and their costs are much higher. So we're sort of solving market failure. Yes, we do want to get new artists out as well, where they might have done some shows. It might be their second tour, or, and we want to, because it is really hard now, that link between building a recorded audience following and getting out on the road, it is breaking. It's getting harder to get out. So it is, some of it is to develop careers as well at the earliest stage. And then the other point is expanding tours. So getting out to more regions. So bringing music to audiences rather than having to make them travel, but also allowing artists to grow their footprint as well. So, maybe even at the 2,000 capacity end, maybe you're doing Academy Music Group shows, the O2 shows, and you were doing 8 shows, but you're not doing, I don't know, Leicester and Brighton, because you would lose $4,000. Well, if we can top up that $4,000, the artist is going to those 2 locations, those 2 venues get filled, fans in those areas are able to access that music in those areas, and you're paying the supply chain, because artists are paying. They're collectively the largest employers in the live sector. You'll have heard me saying this repeatedly. Artists are paying for so much. So if the activity isn't happening, all the infrastructure in the world doesn't help. If the activity isn't happening, it's what we saw in the pandemic. Crew went off to be Amazon drivers, etc. So it is to stimulate that supply chain of services and personnel that rely on the activity. Crew, technicians, agents aren't paid, managers aren't commissioning if the activity isn't actually happening. We talked about Lily earlier. When we went to Parliament with Lily, and this point came up, the MPs sort of saying, okay, so what are the costs for artists? And it was a beautiful moment. Lily pulled out a little black book and opened it up and went, right, photographers and insurance, and listed out all this stuff that artists pay for. And actually, it's quite hard for the public to get their head around that. It's much easier, isn't it, to go, there's either a building there or there's not, or it's either open or it's shut. It's much harder to get into. It's a little bit to the point that Ella and Katherine were making earlier. It's much harder to get your head around the business of music and how it actually works. And actually, that artist is paying for that session musician. That artist is paying the manager's commission, is paying agents, paying crew, is paying front of house, or not paying front of house in some cases, which is one of the things that we want to solve because we want the music presented better. So we're trying to do a number of things. We're trying to achieve a number of aims. And ultimately, we know that it's the activity that needs to happen.
I wonder as well, I mean, you mentioned the idea that people don't understand the industry. I wonder if there's always this lingering feeling sometimes that, like, do you remember when people first started complaining about streaming royalties, like years ago,
Yes.
And a lot of people would always say to us, wow, you make your money from live. You need to worry about streaming because you make loads. And I wonder if there's a lingering assumption that if you're playing live gigs to rooms full of people, you're making good money from it. And yet everything people are talking about now is saying, actually, we are probably making a loss playing this full room to people who love our music, which is, I think for a lot of people, that's a shock, because they still live in this world where live music is what makes the money. And that's all right then.
I think especially as soon as I think because it's such a visceral thing, it's such a human thing and such an important thing to us, live music. And I think when you see it, it's sort of, I can't remember who said the quote, but like, music's magic, isn't it? Really, it's the only art form that's invisible, but it makes you feel incredible. And I think there's something in that so when you see a live show, there's that element of it, and there's these people on stage that you think, wow, that's amazing. So there's ultimately, even in relatively small venues, people are going, well, you must be doing well because it looks great and it sounds great, and that must be an amazing feeling. So you must be doing well. But even at those, and the reason we've got the capacity limit set at 2,000 for this phase, even at that level, you're paying for more and more and more to present the audience with more and more and more. So I think people don't quite, I think you're right. Everybody would go, well, you make your money from live in the past. I think people can't get their heads around that. Shirley Manson was there talking about the tour in the US, and she was saying that actually, I think they did 30 dates or 40 dates. And actually, if they'd done 10, they would have made the same money.
Yeah.
And I think that is quite hard for people to get their head around. But again, on those 10 dates, the band might have made the same money. Everybody else would have got paid. Everybody else would have been getting paid at the expense of the artists. And the other thing I would say is the ability for right now in the UK, the ability for artists at a certain level, and again, that's why 2,000 cap is there at the moment. The ability to raise ticket prices is really impeded by the economic situation in the country right now. So this double hit, if you like, of rising costs and the inability to raise tickets without impacting demand is really, really, really challenging for artists at that level. And ultimately, what we've got in the time that the price of tickets hasn't really moved within those capacity levels, beer has gone up, your taxi has gone up, everything else has gone up, but the artist is subsidizing the price of that night out by maintaining their ticket price because they're fearful of impacting demand. So these are the sorts of things that are in our mind and that we're trying to solve with what we're doing.
Well, look, Grant, I guess to wrap up, really, so one thing is obviously this is going to go out, I think, on the 17th, 18th of March-ish. So, David, is the fund going to still be open? How can I just find out more about it? And will there be future rounds? What should they do if they want to go and find out more right now?
Yes, so go to www.thefac.org/UKAT fund. Everything is there. Applications close at 23:59 on the 20th of March. So it's quite tight if people are only hearing about it now. Hopefully they're not only hearing about it now. We would say to artists, come and join the FAC and we'll keep you updated about all of this stuff. The plan is, from our side, we would like to be running this. The nature of touring isn't conducive to having one round of this per year either. We would like to be running this on a regular basis. We know that the demand is there to be running this on a regular basis. And right now, we've limited what we're doing as well. We don't have support tours in or festival shows, for example. As we expand that, the demand will increase. So the aim is that we'll be running hopefully at least one more round this year, perhaps more. It depends on the trust. But we'd like to be running this much more regularly because that's really responsive and artist centric. That's the way to do it. So the plan is to be doing this much more frequently. And look, ultimately, there's going to be a point in future where an artist is going to be funded from this and is going to somewhere down the line be paying in at the top end. And I think that's going to be, an incredible moment as well.
Yeah, and it's been exciting seeing, I think people like Harry Styles. I mean, I know Harry Styles didn't necessarily start playing in the castle, but Wolf Alice, like a lot, these big artists are looking at this and going, actually, we do want to do our bit. We do see where this comes from. And maybe Harry Styles didn't start in a tiny venue, but the people who are playing with Harry Styles probably did, the people putting on the show. So it's exciting to see that kind of payback cycle.
Trickle-down effect.
Yeah. But I guess, Katherine and Ella, what's happening next for Picture Parlour? Because I think you've moved to Liverpool, you've come out of the label deal, but what's happening? You've got a tour coming up, is that correct?
Yes, in April. Sorry, excuse me. In April, we're going on a headline tour. We're kind of running through all the budgeting and costs of that at the moment. So that's been fun.
Yeah, so we got that tour, which is going to be sick because we've not done a headline tour in quite a few months, really.
Yeah.
So that'll be sick. And then, to be honest, like you said, being out of the deal, it's kind of like that freedom that, like, okay, we can go in any direction. So we've just been writing a lot, to be honest, which has felt amazing because we didn't write for quite a while.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of building up the blocks again, which is a good place to be, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when David talked about magic, I mean, for me, I always feel it like just the idea of people having that time to write a song is a wonderful thing from the outside.
That is magic.
So it's good to hear that you've kind of got that time and you're getting that, even with all the other stuff you're having to do in the budgets. So great. Well, I mean, thank you both all so much. And I think, like you say, David explained, people can go and join the Featured Artist Coalition, find out about the fund, find out about the upcoming tour. And so thank you both for your time.
Oh, thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
Nice one.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So hopefully you enjoyed this interview. I mean, there's no hiding the challenges facing artists at the moment, but there are also some reasons for optimism. So I really appreciate Katherine and Ella sharing their experience and David coming on to tell us about the scheme and how it can work. Normal Service will resume next week with Steve fresh off the plane from Austin. Well, I mean, possibly fresh, depends how it's gone. But thanks very much for listening. If you're enjoying the show, please spread the word. You can support us via Patreon as well, where you can sign up to be a super fan and join us for our usual weekly lock-in, where Steve and I sit down after hours and discuss some of the things we're thinking and doing, as well as topics from the show. Sign up at patreon.com/thepriceofmusic. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, we love receiving your questions, your comments, thoughts on what you've heard. Email us at thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Till then, take care, everybody. Cheerio.